Hey guys, my name is Camden Williams and I will be presenting today about Pam Hillhouse. Now, she didn't write a book, but I did interview her. She was a missionary to Africa in Burkina Faso. I could kind of show you guys here on the little map I have right here if y'all want me to. So this is Africa right here. And Burkina Faso is like over here. I don't know if that helps, but it's like over there. So yeah, she was a missionary there. She helped like plant a church there and just do like ministry outreach and basically just your plain old missionary trying to get people to know Jesus and, encourage them in Christ. Especially in Burkina Faso, they have a very high rate of like terrorism right now. That's actually the reason, I'll get into that later, but that's actually the reason why they had to leave, was because of all of the terrorism. She kind of made a circle with her hands and she's like, yeah, so we're in the middle, and it just kept getting closer and closer and closer to home. And she said they would have stayed, but the board made them leave. But that's just a general overview of like what kind of missionary she was and what they did over there. But anyways, so Pam Hillhouse, she grew up in Gulfport, Mississippi. That's where I'm at right now. And she grew up in church all her life. She has like not like regular testimony, but a lot of the same people that grew up in church and got saved when she was little, and that kind of testimony that I've heard a lot. So it's vastly different from my testimony, but it's still a very good one. And she said what inspired her to become a missionary was actually their missions conferences that they have each year. So she grew up in a church called Bible Baptist Church. And basically this is a independent fundamentalist church, and basically it's kind of the same values, same thing as, like a Southern Baptist church. They just aren't affiliated with Southern Baptist, hence the name independent. So yeah, I've been to church there before, because it's my husband's home church actually. Anyways. So this church has something called the Baptist Bible Fellowship International. And this big name is basically a program or organization that helps, kind of like the IMB. It's basically that, just smaller scale. So basically they send off missionaries and help them get funding and organized and help them, everything that a missions organization would do for you. And they have a missions conference every year, and at this mission conference the missionaries actually come back home to share their stories of, this is what we're doing over there, and this is how we need prayer. And basically it's just a way for the churches to see, oh, this is who I've actually been supporting this whole time and stuff. So it's pretty cool, I think. I've been to one before and it is really amazing. They literally travel from like Europe or Africa or Asia, and they take the time to come to lowly old Mississippi and say, hey, like, we're real people and you're funding our mission and this is our mission. So Pam Hillhouse, she grew up going to these missions conferences every year, and so she got to see these missionaries and she just fell in love with it. She felt a calling from when she was very young to this missions, like, I want to be a missionary, and so she really loved it. And so, yeah. And she gave her life to missions when she was 18 years old. So she, at one of those missions conferences, she said that she actually like went up to the pastor and was like, hey, I feel called to missions. I want to give my life to missions. So they made that announcement, and yeah. And she said she wasn't even really sure that she was like called to missions, whatever you think that might mean. but she said she got confirmation of this calling in her freshman year in college, and her degree in college was basically missions, kind of like intercultural studies, I guess. But she went to Baptist Bible College in Springfield, Missouri, which is funny. Baptist Bible Church, Baptist Bible College. So yeah, and that's where she met her husband, Mike Hillhouse. And so after graduation, after she's done getting her degree in her ministry degree, she didn't really like, she was just like, yeah, it's just a ministry like degree, just a general. I was like, okay. After graduation, that was the question of where should I go? Where should we go? Where should me and my husband go and do missions? And they both always felt a calling to Africa, but they just didn't know where in Africa. Now, she told me that she specifically felt called to a mission field where there was no missions outreach or anything like that. So basically, she termed it as like a pioneer kind of thing, which I've heard that before, but yeah, she wanted to basically go somewhere where it was absolutely dead, no missionaries, no nothing, and just start from the ground up, which is very aspirational. And so they met with their missions coordinator through the Baptist Bible Fellowship that she grew up with in her home church, and they met with them, and basically they were asked, okay, where do you want to go? And they were like, so Africa maybe, and they gave them 4 different areas in Africa in which they could choose from. So her and her husband decided to pray about which place separately, and then she said together they researched about the places, but they made sure to separately pray about it so they wouldn't influence each other's, decision. And one night her husband was like, so what place do you feel called to? And she told me, she was like, I was nervous because I was like, I felt called to Burkina Faso, but I didn't know if he did, and so I was like, eh. And so she told me, she's like, I feel called to Burkina Faso, and he was like, me too. And so that's a cool little story of how they were called to Burkina Faso, because they both were separately praying, and then they're like, Burkina Faso, me too, woo, let's go. So yeah, they packed up their stuff and they went to go raise some money, because unlike the IMB, they had to go around to all the different churches that are under that organization to ask for support. And after they got all the support they needed, they went with their 2 babies, one 3-month-old and one 1-year-old, which is crazy, to go to Burkina Faso to plant a church, and this was in 2006. So they went to Burkina Faso, and I asked her what her challenges were, what the blessings were, basically just like a general, so how was it? And she told me the most challenging thing about Burkina Faso was, of course, culture shock is one of the main things that she struggled with, because the language there is French, which was kind of surprising, but if you think about history, it's not. But yeah, it was French, so she had a French tutor there in Burkina, which was fortunate for her, because I know a lot of missionaries get trained about the language in a different place that they're actually ministering to, and then once they go to that place, the language is different, then yeah, you know what I'm saying. So I thought that was really cool. And then she had a French tutor there, and she said that was really hard, just the language and the fact that they were the only white people that lived in Africa, in that part anyways. So there was no blending in, basically. She's like, everyone was literally pulling at your hair, pulling at your skin, staring at you, and she said that people would literally yell out the word that meant white person in their language. I forgot what it was, but basically, yeah. And she said it's not like racist, which I've been to Africa, so I know what she's talking about. Like in Kenya, they're just like all over you, and they're like, what? And they're like literally clawing at you. It's pretty scary, but yeah, they're literally like, what the heck? So there's no blending in, basically, and that's hard. But she also explained culture shock, sticking out like a sore thumb, and her being in Africa. It's a very unclean place. This is what she said, and I agree because I've been to Kenya. Very unclean, and when you have two babies that are growing up, she said that was really hard for her. She said, we literally took baths all the time, and I just was freaking out about the cleanliness and about my babies and all this stuff. And on top of that, in Burkina Faso, you also have terrorism. So that was like those were like her three main huge challenges that she had. And then I asked her what blessings that occurred, and she told me that after some time had passed, she began to have a family there. And so it was really hard to leave her family. But once you get there and you start ministering to them, getting in the community, learning the language, people start to like reach out to you, and I don't know, they start to love you. So she said she really loved the community she built there. And one blessing that she said had that they had gotten the land that they requested for to build their church on, and they didn't have to pay for it because in Burkina Faso, they had to only pay for the taxes of the land because it's a religious organization that's using it. So if it's religious purposes, then they don't have to pay for the land, they just pay for the taxes on it. So that was really one big huge blessing that she shared with me, because then they could build a church, and they did, and it was really great. And so another thing that happened, so I kind of told you guys before that they had to leave because of the terrorism that was there, and they got there in 2006, lived there for a while, and lived there, had a community, started planting churches, all this stuff, and then the terrorism was just getting too close and closing in on them. The mission board had to pull them out. She says personally, like, she didn't want to leave, but if you're a missions organization, I can see, like, that's their job, is to protect you, make sure you're safe. So they had to pull them out, and that was in 2019. So they came back to the U.S. in 2019. So they were there from 2006 to 2019. So it's pretty recent. I know it's 2021, but that's pretty recent to come back from living somewhere for years. So yeah, and it became especially dangerous, just kids too, so when you have kids, that just adds to it. Right now you can find Mike and Pam in Missouri. I think Mike's family lives in Missouri, and so they ended up there. So they live in Missouri, and they work with their church as like the missions coordinators, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, she expressed to me how she was really sad that, you know, she had to be pulled out of the field and stuff. And I hated bringing that up for her, just because I was interviewing her about missions. But they were really sad that they had to leave. She didn't allude to them going back anytime soon. They seem pretty content with where they're at in Missouri. But she expressed to me, she's like, I'm not sure what God has in store for me. And so, I mean, yeah. So that's basically a little rough summary of Pam Hillhouse and her life, her short-lived life as a missionary. I hope she gets to go back or go somewhere else or anything like that. She really encouraged me, and because I feel so weird comparing my calling to hers, because me and my husband were just in the process of praying about where should we go and stuff like that. And we always thought, well, we want to be missionaries, so we have to go somewhere crazy, right? But every time we prayed about it, and we did pray about separately, every time we prayed about it, we felt called to Colorado. And I told Pam this, and she was like, well, then go do it. Like, that's what you should do. Go do it. And I was like, yeah, it just seems silly because Colorado, suffering for Jesus, you know. But she put it in perspective in which she was like, well, if you think about it, people in Colorado is probably a harder mission field spiritually than physically, because people over there don't really see their need for Jesus, and we want to do like Denver, Colorado, urban, like city ministry. And so she's like, so you might be more comfortable than we were, but you'll probably have a way harder time helping people realize their need for Jesus. And I was like, yep. So that's Pam Hillhouse, and thank you guys for listening. If you saw me look down, I'm just looking down at the like little summary I had of her life. Thank you guys. Yep. Bye.